Basically, the charge is you guys are old and out of touch, so what you're saying is dated and I don't have to listen to it. When someone is presented with information that contradicts their belief, their brain goes haywire and they quadruple down on their initial belief.
The biggest problem you have is always the biggest problem you have, but the objective bigness of the problem is on average decreasing, and it's okay that both of these things can be true. Even though suffering is universal, the choice of worldview dramatically impacts how you perceive suffering.
I do think that it is healthy to be able to take a step back, conceptualize a larger scale, and just put things into context. There was one comment that really killed me. They couldn't tell the difference between you and I, but one of us is an idiot. We'll never know. we'll never know which one of us is the idiot, but it's either you or me. Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU's Day, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. We are live on Discord this Tuesday, next Tuesday, the Tuesday after that, and maybe even the Tuesday after that. So come and join us free on Discord. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, and look, tonight is about pain, and tonight is about punishment. If you live in a rural area, go out and cut yourself a switch that we're going to slap you with. If you live in an urban area, there's got to be a public park or something where you can go and cut yourself a switch. If you live in the desert, go get a slice of cactus. It's going to hurt, but this is what tonight is. It's time for us to crack the belt a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Mostly, 99 out of 100 episodes are just pure vibes and love and exploration and talking about the creative process and being inspired by our guests. Well, there is no guest tonight. It's just us.
There's no guest.
It's just two cranky boomers. That is the accusation that has been levied upon us that we would like to defend ourselves against. So we will do so tonight. But first, let me tell you a little bit about next week and the following week after that. We have many kudos joining us next Tuesday, a return guest who we've been wanting to get back for quite a while. It'll be fun to talk about the growth of his channel since he was first on TCU. It's only multiplied about, 10-fold?
Million.
20-fold? We'll figure out how many fold.
Many folds.
Before next week. And then the following week, we have Schlatt, the serial residue man himself, coming back, mutton chops and all, back into the Create Unknown. But tonight, we need to kick things off kind of responding a little bit to some comments that we received, mainly on Zach's episode, because it brings so many eyeballs and earballs to the podcast. We get some people unfamiliar with us, unfamiliar with our styles and our worldviews and dispositions, and some are taken,
our lived experiences.
Some are taken aback a bit by that.
I'm trying to remember which thing was the impetus for doing this one. What's the first topic here that made us angry? Because there are a lot. It's sort of like a Festivus thing where it's like, are you angry about something? Or do you need to complain? It's like, how much time you got? I don't know if we put our hands in a hat and pull out a gripe, or if there's like a root gripe that we need to start with.
The gripe hat. Let's pass around the gripe hat, children. Well, there is a main pulsating, seething gripe, and that had to do with a discussion that we've had several times actually on this podcast. So, longtime listeners will be certainly familiar with this topic. We had it with Rick Beato. We brought it up again with Pebbles, and that is sort of this generalized worldview, taking a look at the history of humankind and taking a step back and recognizing that things have gotten easier for us human beings from generation to generation.
Yeah.
And wondering sort of how that has, impacted things for people. I think it's a really interesting topic. We specifically have discussed how perhaps it has impacted the creative output of people, which is a good discussion and, maybe even argument to have. There is no simple answer. It's funny. One of the comments on the Pebbles episode was like, you guys just talked about a thing for an hour and ended it by saying you didn't know. It's like, well, yeah. Like
that's not okay.
That's what kind of having discussions about big topics is like. You don't come to a conclusion that, everybody just dusts their hands off and moves along with it there. Well, we solved that problem that is unsolvable.
I mean, I want to respond to a person like that and just say, it's okay that everything isn't a definitive hot take, right? Like it's okay to have a little bit of uncertainty and to maybe leave the jury still out in your mind and talk to other people and read other things and just plain take a while to figure out what something means or what it even is. And that's something that we've talked about a few times on our own, Kevin, where it's just like nobody takes the time to consider anything at this point. It's like instant, smack the gavel down and come up with how you feel about something and then blast that out and roll.
It's an instant emotional response, not rational response. It's instant. Here's how this makes me feel. You're the one who made me feel this way. So now I'm going to attack you for making me feel this way and not even engage with the discussion at all. Just put you in like a little box of, idiot or, whatever sort of pejorative you want, ad hominem attack, and then close that box and move on with your day. So you don't even have to think anymore. You just say, all right, that person is stupid. I've decided that. I don't engage with stupidity and stupid people. So I don't even have to think about what they said. That seems to be sort of the main thing that happens with a lot of stuff on the internet. On Twitter, I get it because, you only have so many characters and these responses would be really long. I mean, we have entire 2-hour discussions on a podcast and don't crack it. But I wanted to circle back one brief second that not knowing, I think, are the tail ends of the bell curve on most big topics. I think
that's fair.
The beginning of the tail end is I don't know. And then you have this huge bump in the middle of people thinking that they know. And then you have the other end, the right side of the tail end, coming out the other side and saying, I don't know.
That's fair. That's totally fair. And I think at the bottom of that the left side of that bell curve is you don't know because you don't understand. You don't know really what you don't know. And the far other side is that you understand that there are plenty of things you don't know. You usually know what they are and what's unknowable. I know I mentioned a long, long time. This was probably like 2 years ago. Donald Rumsfeld, who is a name that will not, ring in the minds of most of the people listening here. But he wrote this memo thing about, there it is, Charles. It has predicted it here. There are known knowns, which are things known unknowns. That you don't know them. Unknown unknowns. And there are also unknown knowns. There are things that you know that you don't even realize that you know. This rubric of 4 things, the 4 quadrants, it's like those political compasses. That's a real thing for how you navigate life. And you've got to recognize that. And the people on the 2 opposite ends of that bell curve spectrum that Kevin's talking about get to the same place on those quadrants. But just for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the main emotional reaction to us essentially discussing this concept of, human progress making life easier for humans is to dismiss the 2 of us, or even Zach was included in this dismissal of a few of the people, by saying that we're boomers, which we are not boomers, but basically the charge is you guys are old and out of touch. You don't know what it's like to be a kid. So what you're saying is dated and I don't have to listen to it. It's boring. It's boring me. You don't know what you're talking about. Shut up, old people. That's essentially what most of the reaction was to that discussion. And
I think of the old man yells at cloud, the Grandpa Simpson thing, shaking his fist. This is really like Zoomer teens shaking their fist at Boomer. Like Zoomer yells at Boomer and it goes into the ether, and it just has the same sort of gravitas, which is none.
yeah, it's just this okay Boomer thing where you could just dismiss people for being out of touch because they're old. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
what these people don't realize, and the first thing that I really wanted to mention in a sort of open discussion about this, is that you and I are included in this discussion. We are not demarcating ourselves from new generations. Our
No.
generation had it so much easier than Rick Beato's generation. When we had Rick Beato on the podcast, he talked about how his generation had it so much easier than his parents' generation. This is the march of progress, and it goes back quite a while. I mean, you could imagine, I was thinking about this morning. You could imagine that, for instance, Charlie Chaplin had it a whole lot easier than Billy the Kid. If you read about Billy the Kid's life, who was a real person, it's not just the movies. It's not like Paul Bunyan. It's not like a folk hero. Like Billy the Kid was an actual person. Had a pretty terrible life and died super young. Was murdered when he was 21. Was orphaned when he was, I think, 15. Did a whole bunch of crime to get by, and then was murdered at 21. And
that's a bad life.
It was a pretty rock and roll life, I guess. It got pretty bunch of sweet movies made, like Young Guns.
Yeah.
But not exactly a safe or easy life. It was a hard life. And I bring up Charlie Chaplin because he was born like pretty much the next generation after Billy the Kid. So like,
Billy
the Kid could have been Charlie Chaplin's dad very easily if he had lived.
Right. That's not far off at all.
No, if he had, I can't remember off the top of my head, but if Billy the Kid could have had Charlie Chaplin when he was like 30 years old, like it would
have worked. Sure.
Would have lined up fine. But by, Charlie Chaplin's era, he made an amazing living being a goofball falling down for a camera that was invented, not basically when he was a kid. So when we talk about things on this like long scale, it truly is a long scale. And to dismiss it as like, well, you guys who are like 10 or 15 years older than me are just cranky old boomers is a ridiculous charge and completely missing the point.
It does miss the point. By the way, speaking of that era, there's something that I wanted to bring up in terms of people having it harder and easier. Some stuff was easy back in the day. And I think of like, there's a guy named Ben Turpin. Ben Turpin is pretty much out of memory of every kind. Ben Turpin was famous in his day, and it was that Chaplin era day. He was comedy. Now, here's what he was famous for. He's remembered now for being the first person to get hit in the face with a pie. He was like on the wrong end of inventing the pie in the face gag. Can you imagine, Kevin, you've worked, how much have you taught? Oh, and his crazy eyes. Charles just posted a picture of him. His crossed eyes look was his other signature thing. So let's take these two things. Kevin, you have talked about putting 600 hours into a video. You've done 18 trillion videos over 10 years. You were Grindr before then, pumping out all this stuff. Imagine if you could have made a legacy that would give you the equivalent of like $50 million today. And all you had to do was be the guy to get smacked in the face with a pie and then cross your eyes and smile. That's your career. That's the whole thing. It's over. That's it. 50 million.
Yeah, but meanwhile, what were the rest of the world's lives like? I mean, it's a pretty Sure. Yes. I guess
It was very bad.
I guess pie in the face guy had it okay, but like the people with polio were not super happy with that, like not having a vaccine yet. So,
No, they had it bad. And I was talking to somebody today because I brought up a lot of times that the nature of my life occupies this odd transition between old and modern. And I remember I was saying earlier today, telling somebody about my dad hunting frogs to sell the frog legs 2 for a penny to the general store. That isn't, I never had to do that. I never had to hunt frog legs for pocket change. I remember him talking about going to his grandparents' house, and they didn't have plumbing. They didn't have indoor plumbing, and so they had the pot that you went in. And because he was the youngest, he had to empty the pot in the morning. And he was little, and it was heavy because it was full of piss and shit. And he dropped it on the stairs.
Oh my God. Like Kevin from The Office dropping the pot of chili.
Yes.
Only it's not
like
chili.
5 years old. Yeah. Like, you know what I was doing when I was 5? Like watching cartoons, not carrying around a bucket of my family's urine.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have to do any of those things. And we're only talking at that point, like a 40-year difference.
Yeah. Not a big difference. I mean,
life is way better now.
Yeah, my wife's parents, my wife's dad grew up in a home with no electricity, dirt floors. Yeah. How did she grow up? Well, she had electricity. She had wooden floors and carpet in certain rooms. Like, it's an upgrade. It has gotten better in just one generation. So,
it's crazy, and I don't know what the people who make those replies.
Well, that's what I don't understand. Is this not self-evident? Like, how do you not understand this? How do you not see this?
The nuttiest thing to me is that when we were growing up and when we were in college, even the ultimate death sentence in the world was HIV and AIDS. That was like the worst thing that you could get, and everybody knew it worldwide. It's like the ultimate public health crisis that this generation faces. Now, 20 years later, when I watch a baseball game, there are competing advertisements for once-a-day pills that people with HIV can take to make the virus undetectable. They're literally advertising to choose theirs instead of the other guys to do this thing that, like 25 years ago, if your doctor told you that you were infected with this virus, it was like, okay, I need to really plan out the remaining years of my life. Mm-hmm. This is a massive change in a short period of time. Guess what? I'm happier to live today than when that kind of thing was more sinister. And you remember, you mentioned to Zach, Rick Beato having an uncle or something like that have a simple infection that ended up killing him.
He had a toothache. That's unthinkable. Yeah, he had a toothache. Yeah. And the toothache killed him because there was no antibiotics.
Yeah.
When he was like 19, he wasn't like an old man. Yep. He was a teenager, had a toothache, died. And now today you just go get a pill in 3 seconds that costs, I don't even know, $10 and you're fine. And the next day the pain is gone and you live.
Yes. Yeah, it really is that easy. And I think when we talk about these things too, we qualify them pretty well. I think that we usually explain like the context of our takes on this kind of thing with enough information and context to set it to say, like, here's what it is, and this is the appropriate fit for what we're about to say, so that it can't be taken as some bizarre blanket statement. We wouldn't say that everything is easier now. There's a lot of stuff that is, to me, unthinkably difficult. One of those is that like dating in high school or something like that. If there was somebody you liked, you might see them the next day at school. Maybe you'd see them at the lunch period. If you had a class with them, you'd see them. That was it. and you were never surprised. You never had to see very much. Now, if you're 16, if you like a girl, there are like 7 social media platforms you can get a minute-by-minute update about the person's life on. You can get texts from them. You can talk to them any hour of the day. They can call you. They can send you pictures, videos. I mean, this is a level of access at a time when something is very hard for you because you don't really know what you're doing. That's a tremendous amount of stress to deal with that, with friendships, with relationship stuff, with just plain social reputation. That is unthinkably difficult to me. I cannot imagine what that must be like now because we didn't have it.
Well,
so
I will say real quick, sorry, that studies bear this out. And I was going to come back later and discuss this, but studies bear out that things like anxiety and depression have been on the rise in the last decade, especially with younger people, because of things like what you're talking about.
It's absolutely a real force, but we always, this is what you just did is what I'm talking about. You're like, yeah, here's research that I'm familiar with that qualifies this problem as being real. I'm not just throwing a thing out there. I feel like we do that a lot. I think it's when we don't, when we throw something out, it's for effect. It's funnier to say some blanket statement that is obviously a little off and a little wrong. When that happens, it should be obvious. But the nuance, I feel like we try really hard. And so when somebody says, you're just boomers who don't get it, it stings, Kevin. It stings.
Well, as hard as you can in a impromptu conversation, that's another thing that I don't know if people really think about when it comes to podcasts, is that it's not like we sit down and write all of these thoughts out as if we were giving a presentation. Like, this is a conversation. So it's a little messier than if we were to come prepared with some written statement. These are not written statements. These are thoughts, some of which happen on the fly, and some of which, even if they've been thought about before, they might not have been articulated and said out loud, and we've tried to explain them to other people before, because there's a big difference between thinking something in your head, understanding what you think about it, and then trying to say out loud that thing and getting someone else to understand what you're thinking. So I agree that I think that we do as well of a job as we can in communicating, qualifying, and contextualizing some of these things, and even trying to play devil's advocate at times to ourselves.
Yes.
But it doesn't
a lot.
It still doesn't seem to matter for whatever reason to a certain percentage, at least, of the audience who are really happy to comment about it.
My question is, where's the breakdown happening? Why, if we put all of this out there and we try to arrange things the best we can in terms of what we're saying, we do play devil's advocate, whether it's one of us pushing on the other one or us pushing on ourselves. If somebody still thinks, okay, boomer, what's happening? Why is this? We're serving them not okay, boomer on a plate here, and they're not for it. Is this? What's the problem is the question.
I don't know the answer to that. I think perhaps part of it is just what happens with cognitive dissonance, where when something goes against what you think, your brain goes into this sort of weird tailspin. There's a bunch of research on this as well that, I read recently, and I'm not going to be able to pair it very well, but the research suggests that when someone is presented with information that contradicts their belief, even when
I sent this to you.
Oh, you did? So maybe you could explain it better. Essentially, their brain goes haywire, and they quadruple down on their initial belief rather than change it to adjust it to the new information. Even if the new information is pretty indisputably
obvious,
right, and they are wrong with what they believed, it doesn't matter. They still are no, and we just won't listen.
Yeah, I'm vaguely remembering the context of this, and I feel like it was something like an explanation for why 20 to 25% of people believe things that to the rest of people, it's very difficult to believe. So one of the examples was flat earth people. There are always going to be 20, 25% in a poll who believe this thing. There's an inability to accept new information that challenges anything that you've thought, anything that you've felt, anything you want to believe. Sometimes it's more fun and interesting to believe and commit to something crazy. Sometimes it's you really just plain believe it. But you'd think that when presented with irrefutable information, you'd succumb here. You'd say, well, fall on your sword in some way. But no, it's more like grabbing on the sword and just swinging it. It's crazy.
Yeah. So it's just something that people do. It's just something that human beings do. We just do that. I don't know why we do that. I don't have the answer. I don't know if anybody does, but it's just something that has been proven to be a thing. So that's going to happen. It's just going to happen no matter what. And I, in some ways, hope that it does happen just as a proof that things that we're discussing are fresh. Meaning, like, if a certain percentage of the audience are unhappy with it, maybe that
they
suggests,
may be hearing it.
It's the first time that they've heard it, and perhaps that suggests that there's a portion of the audience also hearing it for the first time that are intrigued by it and not outright, covering their ears and shouting and saying la 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 la. I can't hear you. Shut up, boomer.
That's true. And the other part seems to be straight up laziness almost. And unwillingness to sit there and think about something, to even listen or read the whole thing. It's really annoying that on Twitter now, if you post an article, retweet it, something like that, and the computer can tell that you haven't clicked it. It asks you, it's like, do you really want to post this because you haven't read it yet? That's annoying. But at the same time, who goes beyond the headline? There's always a lot more to it, but a lot of people don't care. Most of the time I don't care. I only know the most surface level stuff. I'm not interested, not willing, whatever, but for some reason I want to push the little thing that I do think or feel, and that's the retweet or the share on the thing. Occasionally that gets us some odd comments, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll read the article even if I'm not interested because I think the headline is BS. And like, there's no way that's true. I will angrily read the whole article just to see and lots of times it's not true. And the article doesn't say what the headline says.
I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and Liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description.
But there were a couple of bullet point things that I still didn't hit here that I wanted to mention when it comes to this topic. One was just another like really, really easy to understand example of including myself in this discussion of someone whose life was much easier than my parents. Mm-hmm. My dad was on the way to Vietnam, to the Vietnam War. His number was called. He was about to be drafted and sent to Vietnam when that war ended.
Heyo.
So, you
That
know,
was fortunate.
if that doesn't happen, I might not exist. If that war didn't end when it did and it continued,
That's
might
not
not be here.
necessarily true. Half of you could be here. You would just be, you know, in a different mother in Saigon.
well, that's true. That's possible.
I mean,
Who knows?
a lot of things could have turned out differently, and it could have been the creative half that got preserved, and so you would just be a Vietnamese YouTuber right now. That's what the V and Vsauce really means.
Totally possible. Yeah, I like that multiverse Kevin alternate history.
Yeah, you're right though. Where it's funny that you use that example because my dad was in the Navy just before Vietnam, and had it been a little bit earlier on that score, things would have turned out very differently there. And the butterfly effect is tremendous. Like even if somebody doesn't have, they don't get killed or something in wartime. I mean, it's as simple as like, if that happens, my dad doesn't meet my mom. And it's the Back to the Future picture disappearing.
Right.
All that stuff is different. But, have you and I faced either of these difficulties in a serious way? Yeah.
I never had a concern about being drafted for the military. That never was a thing.
Yeah.
Didn't have to think about it. Didn't even have to worry about it. Not a thing.
No.
And there's a list of a billion of those things. And that list has changed generation over generation and continues to change. The other thing, though,
we don't worry about, like, the big one is the real threat of nuclear war throughout the Cold War. We haven't really had that. I mean, there's been the threat of terrorism very strongly at sometimes in places that we've lived. That's been real, but that's very different than like somebody is going to push a button and everybody's going to be dead.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So I just wanted to button that portion of the conversation by saying we are in this boat with you. We're in the same boat.
Yeah.
These are not separate boats. So don't point to us from your boat and say, your boat is old and stupid. You don't understand our boat. It's the same boat. It's an awesome boat. It's a boat full of indoor plumbing and air conditioning and the internet and video games and the
awesome.
Amazon Prime and downloadable books and YouTube tutorials. It's a pretty sweet boat.
I was so I'm going to say this for the benefit of people listening. Kevin already knows it, but I had a problem with my lawnmower a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know what it was. So I turned the key, and it made a sound like a rat-a-tat sound, like a machine gun. And I don't know that device well enough to know what I'm dealing with there. So I Googled lawnmower machine gun sound, and it popped up with a video showing me that the battery was too weak. It was enough to like make the starter click, but not enough to make it actually start the mower. The video was exactly what I needed. Somebody showed me in the video what this was with the mower. The guy turns the key. It's the same sound. Like, okay, in literally 2 to 3 minutes from a really stupid toddler-brained query, I have the answer with a video to an extremely complex technical problem. Now, 20 years ago, you're loading that thing on a trailer. If you don't have somebody to call, and I wouldn't have somebody to call to diagnose it, come and try to fix it. I'm taking that into the place to have it like repaired, whatever. It's insane. It's insane. And you mentioned Amazon. What did I do? My battery was dead. And so for $15 on the Prime Day sale in July, I got a slow trickle battery charger that fixed the problem. And that is 2022 instead of 2002.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. So we're in the same boat is the point. But there's another like gigantic all caps but that I wanted to address as part of this. That is a thing that, again, I mistakenly thought was self-evident and assumed in this discussion, but it's clearly not. So I'm going to say it out loud. And that is the fact that tragedy is not and cannot be eradicated whole cloth. So terrible things still happen, will continue to happen, and will always, always, always happen. Of all That's kinds, true. Of all shapes and forms, malevolence will continue to happen. Your heart will get broken. People will die horribly and tragically and suddenly, and you won't know why, and it will crush you. Like, that stuff will happen. Trauma will happen. Depression will happen. Yes. Anxiety will happen. Yep. We mentioned that earlier. A couple of those things have been on the rise for younger age brackets. So, yeah, like, while a lot of the things have gotten better, and I haven't even mentioned some of, like, the data about things getting better. Things like extreme poverty being completely smashed in just our lifetime compared to what it was just 20 years ago. Like, extreme poverty is nothing compared to what it was like 20 years ago, no less 50 years ago, let alone 100 years ago.
In our lifetimes, the decline has been precipitous, like 33%, something like that, when we started, down to like 9% now. And if you think about when we were kids, if you watch old TV shows from the 80s, you'll see references to this occasionally. Somebody will say something at the dinner table when a kid isn't eating that's like, kids in China would be happy to have that. Now, because there were so many people in China in dire poverty. And now China has been amazing at pulling people out of poverty over those decades. But now if that happens, if I'm a kid at the dinner table and somebody says that to me, it'd be like, what is the Chinese kid eating right now? Because it's probably better than what I'm eating. Why can't he send me food? And in 30 years, that's the shift. That's the shift in something as serious as the global poverty rate.
Extremely serious. Yeah. I mean, that's as serious as it gets, is extreme poverty. And there still is some. That's the point of, like, this part of the discussion, is that you can say, yes, but there are still people starving. There are still problems with homelessness. There are still, absolutely. It's still a very big problem. That still exists. It's not eradicated. The point is that, generally speaking, it's much better than it used to be, and not like a little bit better. It's a lot better. And that needs to be recognized. It's important to recognize that stuff. And it's not just things like poverty. It's things like clean water, like access to clean water. And also, toilet systems. The amount of people,
that's right,
not that long ago, not that many grandparents ago, who died of cholera or like some other like diarrhea related illness from drinking contaminated water was insane. It was insane, the amount of people that used to die from
shocking.
Yeah,
absolutely
just
shocking.
Drinking dirty water,
things like that. Play Oregon Trail. See what killed pepperoni and cheese. It was something that led to diphtheria, some diarrhea based thing. In the end, could have been ptomaine poisoning for all we know. But that's it's a real thing, And I mentioned at an event in June. It was June. That, like in the Civil War, a tremendous number of deaths were from the longevity of the war, people just dying in camp from the sickness. And I mentioned something about a regiment where about a third of the people died. They walked from New York to Virginia and then shit themselves to death. They weren't killed heroically at Gettysburg. They weren't cut down at Antietam. No, they walked halfway down the country and then just had liquid bowel movements until their body gave out.
Mm-hmm.
That's not great. And it happens a whole lot less now than it used to, but it still happens.
It still happens. But yeah, just on a completely different scale. That reminds me of the Age of Sail video that I did about
Yeah.
scurvy, in which, during the Age of Sail, where those explorers were going out on these ships to different places, they would pack those ships with twice as many sailors as they needed because they knew half of them would die from scurvy. So you're getting on that ship and there is a coin flip that you're dead from a terrible, extremely excruciatingly painful scurvy with your whole body swelling up and your teeth rotting out of your head, and just a really painful, horrible way to die. 50-50 getting on that ship. Not awesome.
I do want to pull two comments from the episode chat because they really matter. One of them was Charles Kahn saying that what Kevin was saying earlier is things are tough all over. And that's the truth. And people in extreme poverty have it tough. People who are wealthy have it tough in very, very different ways. They're not the same level of toughness usually, but they can be. They can, people on all spectrums of life decide to end their own lives, for example. Well, that's the ultimate things are tough moment when somebody does that. And it's not like that sort of thing is confined to certain groups of people. The other one is one that Jen just put in the chat, where she says, this is extremely insightful and could have made this discussion last like 30 seconds. She said, the biggest problem you have is always the biggest problem you have, but the objective bigness of the problem is on average decreasing. Both of those things are 1000% true. Regardless of problems now versus problems in the past, they're your biggest problems. I don't have to worry that much about like my younger nieces and nephews losing fingers in textile machinery because they've worked a 15-hour shift at the factory, at 9 years old. I don't worry about that now, but there are biggest problems that are just different. And the younger people, the people who accuse us of being boomers, think that we're saying these problems aren't problems anymore. They are problems, and they're big problems to you. They're not as bad as the problems of, say, the Middle Ages. I think like people in the era of the Crusades probably had it rough compared to Amazon bringing me whatever the hell I want in 48 hours. But, we've got problems too. And it's okay that both of these things can be true.
Yes. Thank you. They are both true. So that's what I wanted to have be kind of like the second part of this discussion, which is that problems still exist. It's it's having this discussion and thinking this way and talking about this concept does not mean to imply that everything is perfect or that everything is better, because not everything is better and nothing is perfect. I mean, like you said, there are people, oh man, you could read plenty of stories about people who grew up with everything. And because they grew up with everything, it warped them to the point of they turned to things like addiction because, it's like, well, I don't have anything else to do. Everything is done for me. I don't even know. I wouldn't know how to do anything if I wanted to. And I don't want to because I don't need to and never had to. Someone else will do it. And it's like, well, I have all this time during the day. What's left? Who am I? That ends up being everybody's question. And no matter on what level you're at or where you're at or what your hardship's at, who are you? I don't know. You got to figure that out.
There's a serious misconception about generational wealth that ties into what you're saying, where people think that if a family has money, then they have money until the end of time. Well, the percentage of people on like the Forbes list that are second generation, third generation like that is decreasing at a rapid rate, in part because those successive generations don't know how to keep money. They don't know how to make it themselves. They never had to. They don't have the skills that the big guy in the family who broke through and did something amazing and pulled together $100 million had. I mean, there's a reason why at this point in time, it's really difficult to name somebody in the Rockefeller family, for example. Yeah, I'm sure they have nice lives, and I'm sure they have a bit of money, but they're not Elon Musk. Whereas 100 years ago, that's the status of that name. Yeah, they're not equipped. Even people in very, very good situations are not always equipped to deal with. They're rarely equipped to deal with the realities that they have. It's easy to deride that as being like, oh wow, son of a billionaire has it rough, doesn't he? Yes, he does. He absolutely does. It's just in a completely different way than I do, and it's not really a competition about who's worse off, because like Jen said, every single person, the biggest problem they have is the biggest problem they have, and that's what matters.
Well, I have read a thing where like a huge majority of really rich families, and that's such a generic way to say it. I don't know what qualifies as rich enough to be in this category, but by the third generation, they're pretty much broke. All that money's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
That's true.
It's over. It only takes that third generation. It's like the first generation built the empire. The second generation kind of ran it, not so great. And then by the third generation, it's been run into the ground and it's over.
And that's the way I saw it once, where somebody said the first generation builds it, the second generation runs it, and the third generation runs it into the ground.
Kills it. Yeah.
Yep.
Runs it into the ground. Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, everybody's got problems. So what's the antidote to this? And we've got to get to I'm going to pull this from Jen because she just popped it in the chat. That she points out that even though suffering is universal, the choice of worldview dramatically impacts how you perceive suffering. That is the best lesson from some of the more difficult works of the 20th century, like things that Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote in the Gulag Archipelago and Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. Primo Levi as well wrote some pretty powerful stuff on this. Elie Wiesel got quite famous for his commentary on, surviving the Holocaust. You always have a choice, whether you've got third generational wealth problems or you've got extreme poverty problems. You can do it negatively or you can do it positively. Jen says if you choose to look for the beauty and the joy and the goodness, you will find them. And boy, is that true. I've been in some real impoverished circumstances in places like India and even in the US. And they're some of the happiest people I have ever seen. They have every reason to hate their lives, and they don't, because they have an attitude that combats their shitty life circumstances and just really brings them a lot of joy. So sorry for that rant, but what she said was too important to let it scroll. We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps, and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys.
Well, I think that it's important to have some sort of button on the discussion, and I think that is the button. It is to say that it's important to think about these things. It's important to recognize them. I think that it is a bad idea to just shut them out. I don't see what you're gaining possibly from shutting them out, from recognizing sort of the progress that humans have made over the past 150 years, also recognizing the progress that's still to be made, and there's plenty of it all around. And, people have different ideas on how to, and solutions on how to get that progress achieved. But that doesn't undermine the discussion. That's part of the discussion. That is really the discussion I wanted to have, is like all of this is part of the discussion. It's not antagonistic in any way to the sorts of things that, are still happening today that are a problem. It's not brushing anything aside.
No.
At all. It's just taking, a longer view. And there were even some comments that I think people were saying that they don't like taking a longer view because it doesn't matter to them. Well, maybe you don't think that. Maybe you don't think it matters to you today. I think that there was definitely, like, if you're really locked in and trying to figure out stuff on your scale, then do that, because that is, where you're stuck day in and day out, is on your scale. But I do think that it is healthy at some times to be able to take a step back, conceptualize a larger scale, and just put things into context, because you don't know. It might help you deal with some of the stuff on your scale. It might not, but it really might help you to frame things in such a way where it's like, okay, this in many ways is the end of the world to me, but in many ways it's really not.
No, and that's, I think what you just said, it can make you feel better and it can make you feel worse, but in the end, either one is going to improve you. That's the little paradox here, is even when it makes you feel worse, you're going to understand more about the situation that makes you feel worse. And I think in the long term, having that understanding is a tremendous benefit. The worst position that you can be in is not knowing what's going on, not knowing what a problem is, having no idea what's even happening. That is the ultimate helplessness. Even if you realize, you look at the broader context and realize, well, shit, things are even worse than I thought they were. Which every once in a while that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, you just have a better understanding of the climate around that problem. So you work on your own stuff, you figure out what your problems are, you try to fix them the best you can, you try to deal with the ones that you can't fix or that you can only improve so much, and then you do what you can to help other people deal with their problems. It's that simple. That's it. Those are the two things that you have to do. Do what you can to handle your own shit, and then help other people handle theirs when you can.
Right.
Literally, what else is there? Everything we talk to, aside from like survivability, like getting, having a family is good for survival at the most basic animalistic level. Like having a pack is better than being on your own. But everything you do, everything we talk to people about is in one of those two camps. We're talking about Zach in that episode because it was so recent. But whether it's Rusty, who I wasn't here for, whether it's Many Kudos, who's coming up, Jay Schlatt, all of these people help solve other people's problems of entertainment, of enjoyment, of happiness. The problem is they don't have enough. Those people help solve it. Vsauce, all the three Vsauce channels do the same thing with educational, informational content. Literally everybody we talk to is helping other people solve some kind of problem. So they've handled their own shit, and now they've created something that blasts out.
But they also still have problems. They
still have problems.
Like, I still have problems. Everybody has problems. Yeah. That needs to just be understood.
Yeah, it's like, I mentioned Many Kudos because he's coming up. No matter what happens in his life, he could overtake Mr. Beast in subscribers, in wealth, all of it. And he is still going to be from New Zealand. The sheep to human ratio is like 18-1 there. And you know what that leads to. Mm-hmm. He's never going to be able to outrun that. Mm-mm. He's always going to have that problem.
That's right.
So everybody truly has loads of them, and it's like the extremely volatile relationship stuff you see with celebrities, famous people. Like they have problems too. You go to somebody's Wikipedia page and it's broken down between the 7 marriages they had between 25 and 50. Like that's a problem. It's a problem, even though they make millions of dollars a movie and have had it,
and everybody loves them, and adores them, and worships them, and things are taken care of for them, and still their life is like a total chaotic mess. One other thing I wanted to mention real quick is that I really truly believe that broadening your horizons as far as the things that you're reading, things that you're learning about, time after time in my experience have led me to understand that a lot of the things that I have problems with, people have struggled with for thousands of years. And that is, it's like actually really helpful. It's really helpful to again, not just be stuck with tunnel vision about the things going on in your life. It's helpful to find out that somebody had this problem 2,000 years ago, like 4,000 miles away. It's good to know that. Like, even though it's still a problem, it could still be a huge problem. But
this is really where like every story comes from, is about transferring the experience of problems. But every piece of fiction you've ever read is being exposed to a problem that isn't yours. And it's not like you can read a bunch of romance novels and then by the time you're 21 be the best boyfriend or girlfriend in the world. It's not going to prepare you for that. It's not quite the same. But you can consume fiction, whether it's movies or books or anything, and understand that other people do feel completely and totally crushed by a breakup. They feel a terrible daily sense of I mean, it could be anything, but when, the unrequited love in a story, that is a tremendous bit of pressure that literally everybody on the planet has been through. Aside from a few people who it's neurologically not on their radar to be concerned with romance, everybody else has fallen for somebody that, for whatever reason, doesn't like them back. Maybe it's because they don't know who you are. Maybe it's because they hate you. It can be, but you can read about these things, and it's why I like things as old as the Bible. And the best example of this is the book of Job. If you read one thing in the Bible ever, it needs to be the book of Job, which is quite short. It's very short. It's studied frequently as a piece of fiction. You don't have to be remotely religious to be into the book of Job. But in like 2 lines here, Job is a very good guy who has a very good life. And Satan says that Job is only a good guy because he has a good life. And that if that was taken away, he would not believe in God. He wouldn't respect God anymore. So things are so good that leads to his faith. That's Satan's theory. And God decides to just make Job's life impossible. Really, truly awful. And his bet here is, I am going to ruin Job's life in every way I can, and he will still have faith in God. He will still have faith in me, despite doing this. Well, that's aside from the religious component on this. It is the most useful old lesson that you can get through a lot of really bad shit and hold on to the things that are important to you, to hold on to the beauty and joy that Jen referenced in the chat. You can have faith in different things, whether it's a religion, whether it's faith in the Red Sox, or faith in your mother loving you, or faith in, just literally anything. All of this is possible despite the most unimaginable suffering that you can be exposed to. It is really useful to go back and read things about experiences that are even worse than yours. The best part about what happened to Job is that the things that God does to him are things that very few people have had to experience. Like, my body has never been completely and totally covered with sores. It just hasn't. I haven't had that level of suffering. I'm sure people who have been burned head to toe have, but most of us haven't. So you read this thing, just be like, okay, there's a way to deal with. I did have chickenpox, Charles. I did. But there's a way to deal with horrible suffering. There's a way to have great things happen to you and not blow it, not have pride and things like that ruin you. These cautionary tales in both ways, they're out there. They've been there for thousands of years. Now they're there in Smiling Friends. Doesn't have to be the Book of Job. It's all there in one way or another.
Yeah. So what are you left with? How do you want to live? How do you want to get through the day? Do you want to get through the day and obsess over
how do you want to live?
The things that are going wrong, or do you want to accept those as they are, do what you can to alleviate them in any way, remedy them in any way possible, if at all possible? Maybe it's not possible. So at that point, then what do you do? Just bear that burden and, take charge of the things that you can take charge of, or just sink into the earth. I mean, those are the options.
It's what Aggie said
at an extreme level.
It's what Aggie described.
Yeah, lay down and rot.
When he was lay down and rot, you can do that for a week or two, and at a certain point, he realized this is not good for me. It's not helping anything. It's not the way to really deal with any problem. But he had to go through that experience of just being a loser for 2 weeks and hating himself, hating his life. And anybody listening to this has had those times. I don't know what caused it for you. I've probably blocked out the reasons that it's happened to me. But everybody has been there, and you come out the other side. Eggie did. Job did. Now this is really the point of all of it.
Yeah. Yes.
Can we before we wrap up? Can we get to the comment?
Well,
the comment
this is really your comment. It has nothing to do with me. So you have the spotlight on this one.
Okay. Let me read off, because it's all very brief. Somebody commented on the Pebbles video that they, meaning I think all of us, but it definitely was me, because I'm the one who said this. They mentioned how most young people, this is the quote, I'm reading it verbatim. They mentioned how most young people aren't exposed to blood. But that just isn't true if you're a girl. Just kind of funny coming from 3 dudes, like that wouldn't even cross their minds. Lucky bastards, LMAO. Now, here's the problem with that. I asked, as we were starting up, I asked Ben to grab the transcript of the Pebbles episode. So I wanted to see exactly what that conversation was. The point that I was making is we were talking about how we aren't exposed to a lot of difficult things now that people in the past were. And I was saying how tragic, terrible accidents, people dying at home instead of in a hospital, those things don't happen very much anymore. We don't witness like goriness and tragedy on nearly the same scale and frequency as a couple generations ago.
Yeah, can I just say real quick, before you read the transcript, my memory of it. So my memory of it, just so I can interject, was that you specifically qualified this idea that we don't see that much blood by saying that you don't mean a little bit amount of blood, like a little amount of blood. You don't mean like a cut. You mean like buckets of blood. That's how I remember it. Like an insane, disgusting, horrific horror slasher movie amount of blood. That's how I remember it in my mind. So please continue.
Now that's how I remembered it, but we get this comment that not only are we boomers, but we're men who don't understand that periods happen. The actual transcript of what I said references farm accidents and all these awful things. I said there's a really good chance that you've never actually seen a tremendous amount of blood in person in your life. I mean a lot. I don't mean a nosebleed. I don't mean a cut that takes a while to stop bleeding. No, I mean a shitload of blood. It's a different thing. And I think that makes a difference. I don't know how you solve it because you don't want to artificially expose people to horrors, whether it's watching gore videos on the internet or putting them in bad situations. But then I go on to say that there's a resilience that's lost from that lack of exposure. And Kevin brought up exposure therapy after that. So I have explicitly said in a decent way, saying a tremendous amounts of blood. I'm saying what it's not, meaning normal blood, not a nosebleed, not something like, for example, period bleeding. And then I do it in the colloquial way by saying, no, I mean a shitload of blood. So what is happening when somebody listens to what I just read and then leaves that comment saying, these are just three dumb boomers who are men who don't understand that girls bleed?
You're asking me?
Now, by the way, if you are somebody who experiences periods and you bleed on the scale that I talked about in the PsychicPebbles episode, you need to call that one in. That's not the kind of thing you deal with at home. If you're losing blood by the gallon, if it qualifies as a shitload of blood, if it's a Rotten.com horror film, if there's a chance that you will bleed out and die, then you have to seek emergency treatment. That I imagine that is not the average experience of a normal period, which I'm just guessing about because I am one of those lucky bastards who's never had one. It's just kind of funny coming from one of the three dudes. It wouldn't even cross their mind. Yeah. So really, though, the serious element of this is that was fully qualified and explained. There was no question about what it did mean and what it didn't mean. And somebody pops this comment and responding to something that was never even said. What do you do about that? Number one, if you're us, and number two, if you're the person leaving that comment, something is happening inside your head that's causing you to really miss the point.
I don't know the answer.
So,
I don't know the answer.
I need you to solve the.
No.
Remember, it's not okay to not know the answer. We
that's
established
right.
that at the beginning of the episode.
Yes.
So
Everything has to have a
need
clean,
to solve this problem.
nice little bow put on every sort of idea.
You have to diagnose and solve this problem right now.
I don't know. I mean, when you were describing what you just repeated, I literally thought like severed limb amount of blood, like mortal danger amount of blood.
It was clear.
Perhaps dead person amount of blood, like bleeding out to death would be a lot of blood, like puddles and puddles of blood in which there's just blood everywhere amount of blood. Yeah. That's what I pictured. That's what I thought you had described. And when you mentioned
people dying in farm accidents and there's no possible interpretation that this commenter...
Horrific amount of blood.
Horrific.
Yes, like a horrific amount of blood, a horror movie amount of blood is what you really explicitly explained, and also said it was not average, like typical person in modern life amount of blood. You know, you mentioned nosebleed. Yeah. I think everyone's probably had a nosebleed. You know, you mentioned cuts. I'm sure people...
Everybody's had a scary amount of blood.
I'm sure people have had pretty nasty, gnarly cuts before that have been like a decent amount of blood loss. I mean, I know I have had stitches quite a few times and there was a bunch of blood. Even as somebody who has had stitches and has lost a lot of blood, I didn't think that was what you meant. I thought what you meant was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre levels of blood in which it's just absolutely shockingly everywhere. And this person not only interprets this as normal for more than 50% of the population on a monthly basis amount of blood, but that you're an idiot for having overlooked that.
I am an idiot for having overlooked it after just having explained it in what I thought was the appropriate amount of detail, because it was such an important distinction to me that I wanted to make sure that people knew we're talking people run over by cars. That doesn't happen as much now as it did in like 1935. You just go your whole life and not see something like that anymore, which is incredible. I'm really happy about it. I'm happy, Kevin, that you and I aren't pulling stories out of our pasts. That's like, well, this one time I had to wade through the blood and it was up to my hips. Like, no, we're blessed that we haven't had a life like that. But this is what I'm talking about. This is what you were talking about early. If we make the effort to be that clear about something, what more can we do? Is there any defense against this at all? Do you just have to accept that you can do your best, you can be as clear as possible, add as much over-explaining information and nuance as you can, and you're still gonna get the okay boomer?
I think so.
Dismissive.
I think you just have to throw your hands up at some point. A certain percentage will not understand. I mean, I know that, for instance, it can be really hard to talk in generalizations. This was actually another one of the comments, was that, our, and I don't know if I already mentioned this, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but that our discussion was overgeneralized. And the fact of the matter is, you cannot have a general conversation without generalizing. That's the nature of the conversation. Like you cannot say, dogs are bigger than cats without understanding that some dogs are smaller than some cats. Like that's true. Like that's part of the analysis. That's part of the statement. You hope that you understand that the audience recognizes that what you are really saying is the majority of domesticated dogs are larger in mass than the majority of house cats, right? We're not talking about cougars and mountain lions, which are also like classified as cats. So those would be big cats. I'm not mentioning tigers, but for some people, like through no fault of their own, people have different ways of processing information. It's literally not their fault. It's our fault for not being even clearer than what we're saying that we think is overly clear. It's like, well, for some people, it's not clear enough. And that's just sort of a gap in having these types of conversations, is that, you can't be hyper specific about absolutely everything, because you're going to forget. Like you're going to make assumptions that people understand that you're overgeneralizing, or that you're saying in general, or that, you're leaving specific outliers out of your statement. But that doesn't work for it. It just doesn't work for everybody. And it is what it is.
You have to skip. You have to generalize to get really get to the point. Otherwise it's like going through a city and hitting every single possible stoplight. It takes you forever and it sucks. There's a meme that somebody posted in the episode chat, and I can't remember the first couple frames of it, but the last two were somebody saying like, I don't care, I just want to be angry. And I feel like that's what we're dealing with a lot of the time here, is that the person who left that comment, I'm sure they're a decent person. I mean, I have no gripes about them. I think they had a moment where they chose not to listen to what we were talking about so that they could squeeze out a little bit of angst. That was more important to them than considering or even listening to what we were saying. So I don't know why they had to do it that way, why they needed to just squeeze that one off, but they must have. I understand that impetus.
Squeeze that one off, pinch off that anger loaf. That's immediately the imagery that went to my disgusting toilet brain. Just squeeze that one out.
We honestly get very few comments that raise an eyebrow. Like we have on Twitter, on YouTube, in the Discord, kind of everywhere, an extremely thoughtful group of people. The people who listen to this podcast are not they're not like surface level thinkers. And I'm not just saying this to make everybody feel good. No, to be at all interested in the things that we talk about. Aside from just wanting to listen to somebody talk, like people are listening to the Psychic Pebbles episode because he is funny as hell and they want to hear him. It's not because most of them want to consider the deeper themes. But if you listen to almost all the episodes that we do and the people we have on, the things we talk to them about, that's because you like thinking about things. You like considering what's hidden, what you don't know, what somebody else does know, and they can tell you about it. You like playing with ideas. You like thinking about how they relate to your life, maybe your art, anything. But you like doing that, and it shows up in the comments, in the tweets and all that stuff. Like, we have thoughtful people who consider things pretty deeply. They respect what other people think and say. It's really nice. So we just, I'm complaining about this one thing, but that's because it's such an outlier. It is really, really uncommon to have somebody swing and miss to that degree. Generally, really, really good, insightful stuff.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's why it happens on an episode that gets, blasted to people not familiar with you or I.
Views,
yeah. There was one comment that really killed me. That was like, they couldn't tell the difference between you and I. They couldn't tell the difference between our voices. But one of us is an idiot, and we'll never know. we'll never know which one of us is the idiot. But it's either you or me. But this person can't tell who's who, so it will remain a mystery which one of us is the idiot. I thought that was super funny.
I'm laughing so hard because that's the sort of premise that would have been a Vsauce 2 video 2 years ago. That it's like a probability, like based on severely limited information. Who is the idiot?
Who's the idiot? Yeah.
Is this solvable? What's the paradox here?
Yeah. The idiot paradox.
That's awesome.
Logic problem. All right. I think we said what we wanted to about this. I know that we have a couple of questions from our patrons that we should hit. Yeah. If you want to go through those.
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, that's cool. I'm trying to see where they begin. Conrad asked why I enjoy picking on children so much. I'm trying to think of how I do that. I like kids a lot. I think kids are awesome. I do like treating kids as if they were adults, though, with the same expectations for the most part that they're adults. You understand that they don't emotionally regulate and stuff like that the same way an adult does, but you treat them with the same dignity and respect mentally that adults do. And that means because they're kids, they fall short of those expectations quite a bit and get slapped down. It's good for them. It's very healthy. This one, Kevin, it's from Base Weight. Is there a moment or a memory where you remember consciously deciding that you wanted to go into creative stuff? Or was it something that was always ingrained? Or was it something, I'm going to add a third part, was it something that was there before you even realized it was there? Like all of a sudden you realized like, hey, I've been doing this. This is who I am. How did it hit for you?
Well, this is going to sound really weird, but I don't know. Maybe someone will relate to this and they'll find it helpful. But the fact is, I had to have other people tell me. I didn't recognize it at all. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just didn't. I never thought of myself as skilled in that area. I just didn't. I don't know. Like I don't know. It's like, it's really hard to describe, but if you're like really good at a sport, you probably are able to recognize that. If you're like the captain, you're the quarterback of the team, like you notice that you're the quarterback and the captain and like how many touchdowns you threw.
Yeah, you get data, you get feedback on your performance there all the time. You play a basketball game, like, oh, you scored 21 points. You're good at basketball.
And it's obvious. People are cheering for you and it feels good, and you play against other people and you win. So you must be better than those people. With things like creativity, I mean, I've spoken before about how, my school days, really did not in any way bolster my creativity on any level. But I will say that the first time I remember somebody else saying that I was creative was actually, I was a senior. I was a junior or senior in high school. It's not like I was like 8 years old. I was like 17 or something.
That's late in the game.
Yeah. And I had a math teacher who I had told that I was going to go to school for computer science, go to college for computer science. And I had found out through my parents that this math teacher had told my parents that that was a bad idea. And that,
what?
Yeah, that I shouldn't go for computer science because it wasn't like a creative major.
Huh.
It was, very math heavy. And I mean, anybody who knows about computers is very, very math heavy. That was weird to me. I was like, my math teacher, and I was, decently good in her class. But she was like,
okay,
like Kevin should
you
not
said
do
her.
this.
Yeah, no, I was waiting. I'm thinking like, am I related to this math teacher?
No, I was not good. I was not good in his math class. I got better later.
Yeah, that's weird though. That's a strange thing.
It was a super weird thing to hear. It's like, wow, my teacher doesn't believe in me, but it wasn't that. It wasn't that she didn't believe in me. She was just straight up like, he's going down the wrong path. And I went down that path anyway because I needed to find out for myself. But I did find out for myself like pretty quickly. I was like, oh, this is not, like, I'm not going to be good at this. When I was at college with the people who were really good at computer science and people who were really good at engineering, I was like, whoa, they are awesome at this. Yeah. And I am not awesome at this. So that was the first time it even crossed my mind, like, oh, other people think that I'm more, I'm uniquely creative.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's...
But then it took me several more years to do anything about that.
And then it's a process too to figure out exactly what it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Like you talked in the past about spending a lot of time on music, for example, and music is not what you do now.
Yeah.
So there's several stages of figuring it out once you figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was far more general for me, where I realized at about 17 as well that I liked stuff with people. I know that's really general and vague, but it's not. Where you talk to people, you deal with things that are radically different from you. It was easier for me because everywhere I went was very different than my background. So everything was unique to me. And everything that I'd done since then has had to do with people, which I know is strange considering I live isolated from humanity for the most part. That's a recent phenomenon. For 15 plus years, I didn't do it that way. 20 years, actually. Yeah, but it's a people game, and that has kind of led into creativity stuff because I like working with people who make things. I like working with Kevin because he makes things. At the end of the analysis of, again, all the episodes we do, that's really about people who are making a thing and expressing a thing. So, creative's nearly as much of a thing for me, but the people who do it really, really are. I am organizing this is from Dan the Latch, and it's mildly tongue-in-cheek, but it's real too. Why should I care about other people when I'm the main character of my story and no one else's feelings actually exist?
Okay.
So Kevin, can you pull the real actual question out of that? Because it is in there.
Well, first look up solipsism.
Yep.
Google that word, solipsism.
Yep.
And you will learn that there's a name for this. Yep. The fact is, you get nothing in life without helping other people. Ever.
Really don't.
You do not. You cannot get. It's what is the, like, you get what you give. Didn't the Beatles have some song about this? I think.
Oh God.
I don't know. Ben is probably on fire right now that I made a Beatles reference. his hair is just sparking. He's vibrating in his seat. Oh, I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney, and he asks him if it's true that the love that you get is equal to the love that you give. That's what I'm thinking of.
Right.
Look up Chris Farley, Paul McCartney interview, which is a skit. It's an SNL skit. It's not a real interview, and it's absolutely hysterical and genius. And if you don't even know who Chris Farley is, watch that. He was one of the funniest people who ever lived. The quote is, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Okay.
There it is. Yeah.
Anyway, you'll never get anything back without putting out something first. It doesn't work that way.
True.
And as we spoke about actually earlier, it can be a real problem if all you do is get things and you never give things. That will it destroys people because you get inverted in a way that sort of like saps the meaning out of your existence. It's a really weird thing. It's a really weird thing that's part of this really weird life of being a human being. But I think in the simplest of terms, you just like, do you want things? Do you want anything? Well, you're going to have to give a whole lot. Sometimes you're going to have to give 100 things before you get one thing back. But
there's a selfish element to it.
I've had that a lot. It's like give, get. But when you do get that thing, holy crap. Sometimes you get back the awesomest thing after you've invested 100 gives. That one get is freaking amazing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, there's an element of self-preservation and caring about other people too, which is a little bit paradoxical, but it's really basic. Think about this. If you only care about yourself, you are 100% of the time immersed in your own problems and your own bullshit. All of the time you are wrapped up in the difficult elements of your life. If you know other people, if you care about other people, do things, even follow along with them, you get to not think about your own problems for a little bit and you can see theirs. And it's a lot better to deal with somebody else's problems than it is to deal with your own. Watching your neighbor move is way easier than moving yourself. It's the same. They're two separate things.
Yes, but helping your neighbor move might
is the ultimate one.
Yeah, that might mean that your neighbor will help you move when you have to move.
Yes.
That's my point.
Yes. There is a good, better, best to this ranking system, to this whole thing. And what Kevin's saying is the best possible way to do it. But if you can't bear to be a decent person, which having talked to so many people in Discord, I know that you're just not decent people. But really, it's good for your own mental health to care about other people and their life circumstances and their problems, because it gets you out of your own head. The worst place you can ever be is in your own head permanently. It's a horrible place to be.
And can also provide great personal meaning to your life.
Yes. This one is for me. It's also from Conrad. I'm going to be brief about it. It says, with all the light wave drama going on, are you upset that nobody acknowledged your presence at all? So for people who don't know, Glink, who we've had on the show, had a small event in Austin, Texas after VidCon that talked about things like panels about, like, will YouTube be replaced eventually? Will there always be dominance by YouTube? What would it look like? What would the models look like for that kind of thing to happen? There were some political things that, like, is it possible to do anything about the political problems that, like, YouTubers, can they do anything about it? Louis Rossman was great because his cause is really about the right to repair. So you should be able to change the battery in your iPhone without violating the warranty. And you shouldn't have to pay Apple $1 billion to do it. It was pretty good. There were a lot of good discussions. There were a couple videos that came out about the Lightwave Festival, criticizing Link. Some Ordinary Gamers, Mutahar, who we've also had on the show, made one of those videos. I was a mix of sick and wrapped up in family illness things. So I didn't jump into
literally
Link's
sick,
video.
You should say literally sick.
Yeah, literally sick.
Not like sick to your stomach or like,
no,
that sort of euphemism.
Like bedridden ill. bedridden ill. And then in the month that followed, I was saying before we started this in the episode chat, before we started recording, that for over 3 weeks now, somebody close to me has been in the hospital for almost all of it. They keep alternating. It's like tag team wrestling where they keep switching out. But I didn't have time to contribute to any of that or weigh in on any of it. My position is really simple on this. I have spent 15 to 20 years going to events that cost 5, 6, 7 figures that have been completely and totally worthless and stupid. There hasn't been one conversation remotely worth a shit at some of those, despite the tremendous cost, despite thousands of people sometimes being there. Lightwave had a lot of very good conversations in one day, and that is enough for me, and that is plenty to build on. I was happy. So the reason I was brought up on this is because I moderated the 4 panels on Sunday. I tell you, it was a long day. It was from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. being on stage talking to these guys, guiding the conversation, very much like we do episodes on the Create Unknown. Same kind of thing, where most of the time you're setting up other people to talk, and occasionally you weigh in. But yeah, nobody said a word about me in any of these videos. And it's so odd to be the person who, the one constant on stage, on the video, the entire time for 8 hours. And I was a ghost. I was invisible. It means that I didn't do anything worth taking a dump on. So that's cool.
I mean, that's how I thought of it. I was like,
yeah, I was happy about that.
Yeah, you got to pass. People like you.
It was like the one guy who came home from the war unscathed. I don't even have PTSD. So I don't even have survivor's guilt. Yeah, that was weird though, because I would have criticized me just to seize on the thing nobody else did. But I hope he does it again. He's obviously got to improve elements of it, do the marketing a bit better, all sorts of things that you do better the second and third and fourth time around. But the one thing you can't fake is good conversations. And we had those. So if you've got that to build on, there's something there. So we'll see if he does it again. But yeah, I didn't mean to duck out for that whole saga. I really, truly didn't. And the people I talk to daily know that I was just plain gone. The people here now know that I've been absent from the Discord for the longest stretch in the history of the Discord. It sucked that badly. So yeah, it just happened to coincide with that bit of drama. Now I've said my thing on it. Yeah, and I hope to go back next year. There are 2 questions left, and I'm choosing the order here. This one's from Willy Whacker. Do you think there will always be huge generational gaps? Do you think the internet will make it worse or better going forward? Because we're only 1 or 2 generations into that mode of life as it is. Kevin, do you think this happens the same way it's happening now, or does it change in some way?
I really like this question. I've never thought about this before, and it's fascinating. Oh man, I don't know. My first instinct is to think that the gaps do flatten a little more and more. I mean, the thing is that a lot of those gaps, a lot of the 20th century gaps were marked by tremendous, like insane changes, like completely insane changes from, steam trains to automobiles to radio to television to the moving pictures and going to the moon, space travel. I mean, the development of so many different medicines. Maybe if they're, and then obviously like the microprocessor, computers, the internet. Mm-hmm. In the last decade or so, I've heard a lot of conversations about how much that sort of thing has slowed down. The
big
leaps.
Innovation.
Yeah, the giant innovation, because there were crazy innovations, even like in like indoor plumbing, and then like indoor like heating systems, and just like crazy changes. The biggest changes in the last decade, like obviously the smartphone, that was more than a decade now though. But we had the smartphone, which is a huge change. And then we have this like service economy thing with, like Uber Eats and that sort of thing where you can get things delivered to you really quickly. That's very different. But I think that a lot of the biggest changes happen when the world changes a lot. When there's like massive technological leaps or like big wars, like things really changed after World War II, and like that boomer generation and that next generation, like the world was so different. So I don't know, like if there's some really ridiculous, which I'm sure there will be, like technological leap of like cancer being cured or something. I don't know. Like I can't even foresee, because that's part of what makes a big technological leap so huge, is that you don't even foresee that it will happen. I don't even know what it could possibly be. So I'm sorry I'm rambling, but I've never thought about this before. And I actually am really interested in the idea. And my initial thought is that I wonder if we're slowing down like the sorts of gigantic changes that make clear delineations between generations. I don't know, though.
As you're talking about this, and you say rambling, but no, you're playing with the idea in a super important way, because this is a big, big idea. This one matters. I do wonder if there's going to be less of a gap between the generations as people use the same thing. So like right now, 18-year-olds and 80-year-olds are on different comfort levels with the internet and phones. Is that same gap going to exist 50 years from now with whatever the technology is? I don't think so. I bet the average life experience that people have, like daily life stuff, is going to be much more similar in a way that makes the generations closer. But what I don't know, and I don't think anybody would really know, is how the personalities and culture elements will develop, and if that will start to close. So like right now, I don't know who's popular right now with the musics. I can't think of a specific thing, but like last year, 18-year-olds and 80-year-olds were both not listening to Nicki Minaj.
Right.
Does that change over time? It might. We may hit a point where young and old people are watching the same types of content and enjoying the same things. And maybe that closes a little bit culturally. This reminds me, though, of that thing about the CW that we were talking about the other day, where that is kids' content being watched by old people. Do you remember the details of that?
Yeah. So if anybody, this like blew me away. If anybody's familiar with the channel called the CW, it's a channel that makes teen dramas, and pretty much only teen dramas. They have shows like Riverdale, which I think is that based on the Archie comics?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like teenage melodrama, essentially.
Soap opera type. Yeah.
Yeah. The average age of the demographics of that channel, the average is 58. Okay. 58. Yeah. Let me say that again. The average age of people watching this channel that is exclusively melodramatic teen shows is 58 years old. That means, I'm gonna belabor this. That means half the people are older than 58 that are watching. Like more people are older than 58 because, you die at some point, probably in that, 30 years or so. So you have way more people, right, between the ages of like 58 and average life expectancy watching that channel than you have, say, actual teenagers.
I would have guessed if somebody had put a gun to my head and said, tell me the average age of CW fans, I would have said something like 17. I mean, I wouldn't have been remotely close. It would not have
said
occurred
13.
To me.
I mean, I thought it was for like tweens. I thought it was like for, like tweens.
There's some good action stuff on there.
I don't know.
There's good stuff. I've watched a couple series. I told when this came up, I told Kevin that I've watched All American, which is about high school football, and that's fine. But man, I'm way younger than the average. By like the average person could be my parent. I'm that far from the average. And I felt like an idiot saying that I've watched a show on CW. Yeah, it's wild, but that's an example of teen content appealing to grandparents, and I never saw that coming. Maybe that sort of thing maybe that'll be more common as as all of this goes along.
Yeah.
Maybe everybody's watching the CW in 2072.
I mean, this is a whole other podcast entirely, and we sort of, Rusty and I talked about it a little bit, but there are only so many ideas, like in general. Like there are only so many different ways you can make the donuts to make donuts. So I do wonder, if at some point everybody kind of just has their own flavor of donut that they like, but they all like the same, but everybody likes donuts. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but
what if we hit a point where everybody thinks they have their own unique flavor? So they wake up in the morning and they go to their kitchen and push a button that is, well, they don't even have to do it because their presence is recognized. They walk in the room and their favorite flavor of donut drops out onto a plate and they pick it up. And it's created specifically for them. It has every little ingredient in exactly the right ways, just 1,000% unique, like DNA. What if everybody has that happen, but then everybody's getting the same donut and they have no idea that their specific creation there is actually the same as everybody else's?
I don't know.
Did I just invent the plot for like a Hugo Award-winning short story? I think I did.
I was going to say, this is a Kurt Vonnegut story. I'm sure he wrote this story already. It's in some collection of Vonnegut short stories for sure. Yeah. No, but my point is, and again, I do think this is a whole different podcast, so I don't want to stay on it, but
it's big. Yeah.
But the collective we as human beings have not been at this like luxurious, like creative mass market, make things for other people endeavor for very long. It has not been going on that long. I mean, yes. Okay. We're going back to this, like qualifying everything. There's been art for thousands of years, but like the mass marketing of it, not very old, where, somebody records an album and everybody listens to it, or somebody makes a YouTube video and everybody can watch it. Like that idea is still pretty nascent. So there have, to this point, still been a lot of opportunities for like really fresh ways of making the donut. And does that run out? I don't know, because part of me, we didn't really talk about this specifically with Beato, but I do think that's happening with music already. I just think like with music, what's new? What's like really new with music? And I know that you can write new songs, but it's like, man, is it really that new? It's like, not really. It's a remix, sort of, even if it's like a spiritual remix of some other artist. I don't know.
You can't listen to songs from right now and know that they're from right now the same way that you can listen to a song from the 60s and know it's from the 60s.
That's a technological issue, though. It's because they recorded it with tape and with like garbage machines.
Oh, I meant like the style and lyrics and all that stuff. And
okay.
Yeah. I mean, like now it's less of an era defining thing to me. But what you described is very, very clear with movies where I forget the percentage. I know I've shouted out Jen here a million times in the chat, but she's put a lot of time into movie videos with the Out of Frame channel on YouTube. And I forget the stat, but it's something like 90% of the top 20 movies are reboots or franchise things.
Right.
Like 1 out of 10 movies is an original work of art. Like that's nuts. That's crazy. And you pull up something from any random year pretty much before the last 10 years. And it's, they're fresh movies that define that year. And occasionally you get a sequel or two that has staying power, but 90% being a continuation of prior IP, that's bonkers.
Yeah. That's a little different than what I'm positing, though, because that's really a result of the business of movie making, not a result of running out of ideas.
That's fair.
I think
That's
there's
a
plenty of
distinction
like
that's
independent
worth making.
movies that have like fantastic, fresh ideas.
Yeah.
I don't know about music though. I don't know. I think that I don't know. I don't know how much innovation is left in that
We run out of
entire
run out
medium.
of songs.
Yeah, well, I just don't know how much innovation is left. Like, what's left to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's sort of like what Beato and I were talking about with technical death metal. So technical death metal is a niche within the umbrella category of metal, of which there are a lot of niches. There's a lot of different types of metal now, which is interesting. You know, that you took what was like a category that included bands from, you know, Black Sabbath and Judas Priest and Metallica or whatever. And like, this is what metal is. And it's fractured into like a bunch of different subgenres. Okay. So it's gotten to a point where something like, so there was like technical metal, and then there was death metal. And now, I mean, you can imagine this as like a flow chart or like a genealogy tree where they like are having babies. And now you have like death metal and technical metal having a baby that's technical death metal. My big idea is like, how many babies can you create until you run out of babies? And I think that there is a limit. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that there's a limit.
It's certainly getting harder to stand out as original. Would you agree to that?
Super hard. That's my point entirely. Yeah. It's like, how could you be original? It's like been done. Because there are so many limitations to what people find pleasing to listen to. Like, you could listen to like math rock, which is really complex, or like different types of jazz that are like really complex. And like, that's fine, but like, it's never going to be popular. Like the Venn diagram of like fresh music and popular music, I don't know, it seems sparse.
Yeah. Charity Croft had a really good point about this weeks ago, in terms of the creative side of it, that he referenced a book called Steal Like an Artist. And the basic idea in that book is that, you know, you get comfortable with the fact that anything you do is going to either have kind of been done before or sound or smell like the thing that's been done before. It's going to be derivative in some capacity because that's how humanity works. And I talk to so many people who are really concerned, like they don't want to make this type of video because somebody's already made one on that topic. Geez, it doesn't work that way. No, you recognize that you're going to do it a little differently, and you just don't worry about the things that are not completely and purely original. If you're so concerned about making something original, sit down and invent a language to do your video in. Don't go halfway with it. Just invent a brand new language, and then it will be a truly original video. If you don't want to do that, then just accept that it doesn't work that way, and it's completely and totally okay. Make your new death metal, and borrow a few pieces, borrow a few pieces from a bunch of different places, and you'll put your own spin on it.
Rap has gone through this as well.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like you could do the same thing with like early hip hop to gangster rap to I don't know, whatever, to mumble rap and all of that stuff.
It's normal.
My question is there a limit to that fractioning? And I think that the answer is yes.
Yeah. At a certain point, you don't have enough of your audience is too small to sustain it, right?
There's just only so many ways that you can like carve that steak.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Like you can only do this so many ways. There's not an infinite amount. I mean, I remember Billy Corgan talking about in like the late 90s that there was nothing left to do with the guitar as an instrument. Now, I have heard some new stuff since then with like bands in these like weird metal niches. But you know what's not on the radio? These bands in weird metal niches. Like, you know,
right.
I love Archspire to death. They're never going to be on the radio because they focus on doing weird crap.
Massively popular. Yeah.
And being really fast.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, it's an issue that I have a feeling is going to come up over time a lot. I think we're probably going to have new developing takes on this as time goes on. Wanted to hit the last question from Cheesy, who we mentioned not too long ago hit the 50K mark. That's big.
Yes, awesome.
Cheesy has another milestone on the way, and that's the basis of this question. The question is, what are some of the most valuable skills/experiences/stories that came about during our college days? Because Cheesy is heading into the university for the first time in about a week. Congratulations there. This is a giant question.
Not for me.
I know that
it's really easy for me.
I was hoping it would be, because I have in my mind this topic as a standalone episode if anything happens to you in life and there's no guest and I'm stuck on my own.
Okay.
Because I know that I can do like 90 minutes off the cuff and it's going to be easy. So I hope yours is succinct.
It's very succinct. It's to do extracurricular activities, and that sounds kind of boring, I guess, but it's totally true. The most I got out of college was being involved in extracurricular activities. It was not the classes. I did not get much out of my classes, to be perfectly honest. There were like some technical skills, absolutely, that I developed. But like personal growth skills, which really help more in the long run. The technical skills you really can get on your own. You can get at home.
Now you can, sure.
You can like do tutorials at home. You can get those technical skills. You can learn how to edit. You can learn how to light a scene. You can learn how to do any of those technical skills, but learn how to Photoshop. But the social skills and like the personal growth stuff 100% occurred for me outside of the class and being involved in things that I didn't have to be involved in. I had to go to class. If I didn't go to class, I would fail. All this other stuff, nobody cared. Nobody cared if I made comics for the newspaper. Nobody cared if on like the weekends I was, did a show as part of a comedy, improv comedy group. Nobody cared if I did stand-up comedy at a bar. Nobody cared. I didn't get graded on it. Nobody was watching to make sure that I did it or showed up. It did not matter. But it mattered to me.
Yeah.
It mattered to me that I did it because that was how I learned more about being self-motivated and working with other people in creative arenas. Learning more about what I'm good at and what I'm bad at. I learned way more in the extracurricular arenas than I did in the classroom about that sort of stuff that I think has been a lot more valuable for me in the long run.
That's a pretty good overview of that side of it. I like that. And my experience was very different in that, number one, if you can, this sounds dumb and nobody will tell you this. No college brochure will admit to this, but the undergraduate education is about basic skills. It's not actually high level stuff. You specialize in graduate school. It is about basic skills, no matter what you major in. You need to learn how to read and how to write. It sounds crazy because you think you know how to read and know how to write. You don't. If you can read and then write 500 words, say 3 pages about a thing coherently, you will always be employable forever. The end. Like that, it is that simple. If you can do that, there will always be something that can make you a buck as you, if you like it, then you have an easy job. And if you want to do something else, you have a way to make money as you try to do that other thing. Focus on the most basic things: reading, writing, and gaining some knowledge and thinking about things. NRM says this in the chat just now about thinking and communicating. That's really it. That's what I mean by writing. There is like, it's obviously more than writing now, because more modes of communication are viable now than they were when I was in college. But if you can get information, do something in your head with that information, and then spit it out in a succinct, coherent way, your life is made for you. You will always have something going. You are recession proof. You are nuclear war proof. With the other stuff, I had a great experience on the classroom type side. And I would tell anybody to work very, very hard at finding out who the professors are at their school, even if it's not in the department that you're studying or the major that you're into. Find the interesting people and then seek them out, take classes with them, get to know them. That makes all the difference. any ding-dong can teach you Stats 101 on whatever site is popular now. What you can't just pull up online and get to know, you can't have this back and forth interaction with people playing with ideas, with accomplished, exceptional thinkers and men and women. These are the rare ones. There are not very many that still exist. Some colleges have more than others, but they exist absolutely everywhere.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, oh, look at me. I went to a college that had great professors. My name's Matt. I went to a college that had great professors that changed my life. Look at me. Wow.
No, the one who is most influential, and I don't think Ducky is in the chat now, but I was talking to Ducky about this a few weeks ago. And Kevin, over the years, I've mentioned, there's Ducky. Excellent. Yeah, I've mentioned this guy to you, but the very first time I met him, we were killing some time and waiting for somebody to arrive. I don't know what it was, but it was like 10 people in a room with him. And somebody asked him, tell us about the plane crash. And he said, well, which one? How many people in the world need a follow-up, like to identify which plane crashes they survived?
This reminds me of the Gallagher. Why?
Why?
It's the same like shocking response to a simple question.
He was playful about it, and I thought it was a joke because I didn't know him at all. I thought it was a funny response. And then no, it turned out that he had more than one. And he told us about one where he had to drag somebody a mile through the jungle and this and that. Like, that's really interesting, and after his death, it seemed that he had ties to the CIA many decades ago. He had a very interesting life, and he was an interesting person. And no matter what school you're at, there are a handful of people at the least, maybe dozens if you happen to be in a hot spot, of really interesting stories. And they might be musicians or novelists or statisticians or historians. Could be anybody. But talk to people who take classes, hear who they're talking about, the professors they like, read reviews online, see where people, what they've done with their lives, look them up. Don't just look at your schedule and see like who's teaching a class at 10 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays because I need that for a slot. That's okay, and you'll fulfill requirements that way. Sometimes you have to do that. But generally, you want to find the people who you should be exposed to and who you can study with, and then you go and do it. That makes all the difference. It makes a tremendous difference. It's really the same answer that Kevin said, but mine is inside the classroom. His was outside the classroom. We gave the same answer in two different arenas.
I like it. So you have the chance to be successful in either arena or both if you are just really killing it, I guess. The moral of the story here is don't forget, we're all in the same boat, okay? We're all in the same boat. Yeah. We're together. We're floating along. It's a good boat. There may occasionally be leaks that need to be plugged, but if we go through those trials and tribulations, we will continue to float along in this boat together. If you want to join our TCU boat, like we have all of our patrons here hanging out with us, which was a great crowd, by the way. People came out in droves just to hang out with us tonight, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah, awesome.
And really do appreciate that. If you're interested in joining our TCU boat, just go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. It is the boat for all of us. But regardless of that, thank you to our patrons for hanging out for sure. Rip us in the comments. Look, it's good material. So we'll get a whole 2 hours out of a podcast if you make fun of us. And if the person who called one of us an idiot has discerned which voice is stupider, please let us know if you're still listening.
We got to know
to this episode. All right. We are out of here next week. Many kudos. Come back. Hang out. We will have another great time. All right. We're out of here. See you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Vidioger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Scuff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Chelxies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.